All right. Hey, good Monday afternoon, everybody. We are back after a 2-day break with more severe weather opportunities here in the cards as we work into tomorrow and a potentially major severe weather outbreak today across the southern plains. I have meteorologist John Kemper with me here today, stepping in for Michael. For those of you that have the Clarity platform, John was sending out all kinds of alerts and impactful weather nowcasts on Friday evening. So you all probably saw some of his forecasts there, and I'll give him a shout out that they did very well. Lots of advance notice there. So, John, how are we feeling today? Another potentially impactful couple of days heading our way.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It looks, for the Central Plains, especially, and then the Missouri, St. Louis. I am a little bit concerned about the severe weather, especially for tonight. I think for tomorrow, it's a lot of it, Brett's going to depend on if we can get any sun. I think during the afternoon, how quickly that AM activity can clear up. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we're not looking at another tornado outbreak around the Ohio Valley. That's the good news, at least. That there's definitely some tornado chances, unfortunately, that we'll get into here in a bit. But I think in terms of as severe weather concerns go, it's just something where we need to keep an eye on the radar and keep a close watch on things. But hopefully nothing like we've seen to end last week. That's for sure. We could use a little bit of a longer break.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not quite the same setup as what we had last week. Certainly nothing to ignore,
For
no
sure.
doubt about that. But there's a difference in terms that we have a lot of AM activity that will be in more typical Friday's event. It's rare that you get sunshine all day in this
Mhm.
area of the country. And so that was a type of event that we don't see very often. And we saw the result of it 30 plus tornadoes and numerous stronger tornadoes. London, Kentucky, I know more than 20 people lost their lives there. So, we take these situations very seriously. Again, not quite the same type of a setup as we work into tomorrow, but still one to watch. And today, I do want to touch on this briefly. We've got a tornado watch in effect. This is what will head our way as we work into tomorrow. Tornado watch in effect for parts of Oklahoma and Arkansas. Here's a look at the day one severe weather outlook. So they have a moderate risk for severe weather down here across Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas. This includes Oklahoma City and Tulsa and Joplin, Missouri as well. And what we'll have to monitor are more supercells developing in this region as we work throughout the afternoon and the evening today. Just real quickly here, this is all available on the Clarity platform, by the way. You can scan that QR code up in the top left for more specific details for your precise location. We're going to give you a broad idea here, but if you're looking for more location specific details and especially those alerts as severe weather does happen, I would highly encourage you checking out Clarity Home. But here's the tornado risk today. So, 15% hatch tornado risk. That's actually the same probability that we had in our area. It's lower Ohio Valley on Friday as a comparison. These areas will also have probably some giant hail, John, if you will,
Yeah.
and a pretty decent wind risk as well.
Yeah, I would say, Brett, at this point, especially the first couple hours once the severe risks get going, we're already starting to see some of those cells develop in Oklahoma, but there's actually going to be a second round potentially that develops a little bit further to the west down there as well. So there's two rounds on the table, I would say, for Kansas, southwestern Missouri, northeastern Oklahoma, and the hail size. We were pretty shocked with the softball sized hail that we got down in Bloomington and a little bit further to the west. That's likely going to be a definitely a threat for a lot of these storms. Very very large hail initially, and then as they start to move into a little bit more of a more favorable environment for rotation, that's when we start to get really concerned about the tornado and the long tracked tornado risks that can extend pretty much all the way from to the east and to the northeast here in Missouri and Arkansas. So if you've got friends down there, definitely would encourage you to go ahead and give us a share this stream with them, take some screenshots, send it their way. Just, make sure that anybody down there is prepared for this. Is unfortunately severe weather down there again. And, with these tornado risks, it's definitely something that these will be moving very fast. And we want to make sure that people are prepared and mindful of the risks, especially as we get over the next couple of hours here.
Yeah, John, and we saw some of this on Friday
Mhm.
on our future radar and Clarity. You can see the data trying to hook these storms. Here's one on Interstate 44. Now, again, don't take these verbatim, but it shows the idea that, if you're in Joplin, if you're in southeast Kansas, if you're in eastern Oklahoma here, guys, you can see all of these individual supercells that the data is trying to fire off. Eventually, some of these will congeal a little bit into a cluster where you'll have that damaging wind threat. But you can see that here as it works into eastern Oklahoma and into Arkansas. But certainly a substantial threat down here today. And if we watch how this evolves, real quick, if we watch how this evolves, note the strong storms working into Missouri and into Illinois as we work into tonight. This is by 11:30, and these will continue to push off to the east and be the start of our day tomorrow here in Indiana and into Kentucky.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to note too for the overnight. Notice the future radar saying 1 a.m. As this activity continues to push to the east, especially through the St. Louis area, an area that really does not need any more severe weather really for the rest of the year. They have had their full
Mhm.
share, unfortunately, over the past couple of months here, but I think that more or less the damaging wind threat, if there's one small piece of good news, I think the damaging wind threat is likely going to be the more prominent concern versus the tornadoes. Again, still something we want people to take very seriously here, especially, yeah. And Brett's lining that up there. There's definitely some 50 plus risks, 70. I think in general, I think in our latest video update I did earlier, Brett, I think I said 60 to 70 seemed likely with that leading edge of the line. So, again, circumstances are not great, especially with the recent storm. But if there's one small area of positive, it's that I think the tornado risk might be a little bit less up there as we get into the overnight.
Yeah, for sure. You can kind of see this is our future wind gust. This is available in our ag and business packages on Clarity, but this is our 3 hour max future wind gust to give you an idea of where some of these stronger storms will move through. You can start to see it weaken a little bit as it pushes east. Into the Ohio Valley into tomorrow morning, but it does bring in some stronger wind gusts with a couple of these storms into the Ohio Valley as we get into tomorrow morning. Now, this isn't our main wave. You can see that in here. You can see here we do have some storms that'll be working in as we
Mhm.
work into the pre-dawn hours and the early AM hours tomorrow morning. This isn't necessarily the main severe weather threat, but there could be some stronger storms and could be a messy commute tomorrow morning across the Ohio Valley. And I know, John, you were kind of talking about a couple of things to watch with this initial wave tomorrow morning as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think something that I haven't seen mentioned a lot, especially for those of you Bloomington south towards Evansville and Western Kentucky, Madisonville, Southern Illinois. There's a corridor where I think that we're likely going to see some scattered, more likely a broken line of storms that'll push from the west to the east. And when we take a look at the models and we're looking at some of the upper levels, there's a lot more support there for some damaging winds of 50 to 60 miles per hour. So I think that that's most certainly going to be a risk, I would say, from about 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Central Time as it swings from the west to the east. Brett, it would not surprise me to see a few severe thunderstorm warnings kind of right along and to the south of that I-64 corridor, especially. So I definitely think that's something we will need to pay a little bit more attention to. And we'll obviously, throughout the night be updating a lot of our clients on that, especially for those that are getting up in our school districts down there, because that's a lot of times when the bus routes start to begin. So definitely some concern there. I don't think it's a widespread risk, but something we'll need to watch. Now, for central Indiana, Indianapolis, Richmond, Terre Haute, I think that the storms themselves in terms of intensity might weaken a little bit in terms of the winds. A few gusts, 35, 45 certainly in play, but very heavy rain is going to be working through the area, right during rush hour in the AM commute. And everybody knows, especially, the greater Indianapolis area, where those zones are, especially across even the city, where, it doesn't take much rain to quickly to flood some of those roadways. So
Sure.
definitely give yourself some extra time on the commute. And the good news, I guess, is not a lot of strong to severe risk with this first AM wave, but it's certainly going to be heavy. It's going to be noticeable, and it's going to be impactful on travel.
Yeah, for sure. So this is 7 a.m., guys. If you can see the time there in the bottom, as John mentioned, you're kind of looking at kind of this 5 to 7 a.m. time
Mhm.
frame for this really beginning to work across the state. Similar, gosh, was it a week ago? I think that we had flooding across. the Indianapolis,
Yep.
central Indiana area in the morning. And if we look at this is just the next 24 hours or so. It may even be higher than this, but you can see out to the west through the morning out to our west, trying to show more than 2 inches of rain, probably locally higher even here in central Indiana as well. And that leads us to the rest of the day. And so we've got the morning wave, guys. It's not the main wave. We do have the morning wave. Could have a couple of stronger storms, localized flash flooding, heavy rain, lightning, if you will. Southern portion of the state may need to watch for a couple of severe storms, strong severe storms as well. But the main show is as we work into the afternoon and into the evening. And this was just updated less than an hour ago, sent out as an insight. And I think you did you do a video as well, John, just a
Yes.
little
Yep.
bit ago? So
Yep.
those of you that have Clarity Home, John put out an in-depth video analysis on the Clarity platform talking about the system and the setup for tomorrow as well. Would encourage you all to check that out or scan the QR code to get access to Clarity Home. But here's what we're looking at, and it feels like the bullseye for most of this spring has been Southwest Indiana, Western Kentucky, down through Tennessee. I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've seen Paducah and Evansville having been hit already this year, and that's kind of the bullseye once again tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking that the Evansville area and further to the southwest, I feel like every event we have, there's at least 3 or 4 tornado warnings for one lucky county in the entire event. It just seems very, very repetitive, unfortunately. But I think, guys, this is a situation, especially for those of you in the yellow, the possible zone: St. Louis, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Bloomington, Lafayette, Champaign. I think your risk is greatly going to depend on how quickly that AM activity clears out. And what I mean by that, because I know we're going to start getting questions on it here, Brett, is that yes, if we start seeing clouds moving out and we start seeing more peaks of sun as we get into the late morning and early afternoon, that is going to help refuel the atmosphere a little bit quicker and keeping those severe risks a little bit better. Now, if we do stay mainly cloudy across central Indiana, eastern Illinois, western Ohio, I don't want people to misunderstand me. There's still going to be severe risks. They're still going to be possible. But I just think in terms of magnitude and how many storms we're dealing with, I think it likely will be in a lesser degree, in my opinion.
Yeah, so let's kind of go through the forecast. We'll skip ahead. So here's a look at again overnight, guys. You can see some of those storms moving through as we go throughout the morning hours. This was the midday run of the HRRR, and what you see here, what John was talking about, is some of this clearing that starts to happen. Now, what we need to really keep an eye on, if we take a look at cloud cover, and I will mention, sometimes this particular model here can underdo some of the clearing a little bit. It tends to be too cloud happy, but it is trying to see, especially across southern and southwestern Indiana, as we get into the early to mid afternoon hours, it is trying to see some clearing. If this were to expand, I'll circle an area. This is where the clearing is here.
Mm-hmm.
If this expands north faster and more widespread, the severe weather threat would likely increase for the afternoon and the evening hours across central Indiana. Right now, again, your highest threat is across southwest Indiana, which is where the data is trying to see this clearing. So I think really, really key tomorrow morning, how fast does the rain get out? How fast can we get the sunshine in? Probably will be the make or break part of the forecast, because unlike Friday, instability is a little bit more of a question. Friday, we didn't have any problems with instability.
Yeah.
The atmosphere was very unstable, which we saw. This setup is a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. I think that's an excellent point here with the cloud cover. And you can kind of see it there on simulated radar here too. Brett, can you toggle the time in the upper right-hand corner here real quick?
Yes.
I would say, in general, and this would be 3 p.m. Eastern time. Again, and don't take this verbatim. There's still going to be some adjustments, but those scattered storms that form in Kentucky and Illinois, those would be a few of the pockets that we keep an eye on as this activity slowly pushes from west to east. I think the way I envision in this is maybe not necessarily supercells, Brett, but more just these individual line segments that form and as they gradually put west to east. This run right here, that would put 7 p.m. Eastern time, pretty much just that I-65 corridor right there. Likely some 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts if those storms can be organized. Would you say, Brett?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that we can see this here. Yeah, if you look at this particular model, you can click around and see that it's trying to show those locally
Yep.
higher wind gusts, and it won't necessarily pick up on some of the higher end threats. But I think that this highlights very well the capability of these individual line segments. And then if we go back to our simulated radar here for a second, down here, if we go down into Kentucky, this is
Mhm.
where Western Kentucky and into Western Tennessee, where initially you get more of this discrete supercell action being possible, which is where your tornado threat is probably going to be a little bit higher, kind of in through this area. Again, if we could potentially get this instability to tick a little bit further to the north, that would maybe rise into southern Indiana through this area in here. But I do think that just based off the setup, if I had to kind of break this down, this area in here is probably where your better threat for some tornadoes will be. I would even say Southwest Indiana is a little bit up in the air, depending
Yep.
on instability. And then it's north, the northern edge is more of a wind and maybe some small hail threat. I don't think that we're dealing with grapefruit or baseball or softball sized hail like we dealt with on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think visually too, when we're showing some of these models, everyone, and then tomorrow when you start using the Clarity radar and looking as this activity begins, another difference between this and Friday's event is that these cells that you see forming, especially in that tornado risk area, they're likely going to be a little bit smaller, just because there's less instability, less storm fuel. But that doesn't mean that they are going to be any less weak in terms of, we might not have as big of a hail risk, but those still can produce tornadoes. So I know sometimes when we see one particular event, we think that the next time we talk about a severe risk, it's going to be exactly like that. And most of the time it's not. So just be
Mhm.
prepared. Even if on radar it looks a little bit different or it doesn't look like much, we definitely want everyone to take these risks seriously, even though we are cautiously optimistic that it's definitely not looking anything like it did on Friday, which is great news.
Yeah, and there could be maybe an isolated tornado threat, a
Mhm.
tornado or two, especially across the southern half of Indiana. But I would be surprised if we had 25 tornado warnings again, like we did on Friday. Again, I think that we've got the AM wave, some heavy rain and storms, maybe a scattered strong to severe storm along the river, and then we have the clearing. The more time we can get to clear, the more energy that these storms will have to work with. I would say if I had to kind of pinpoint a time frame, 5 to 8 p.m., 5 to
Mhm.
9 p.m. Across the state, especially I-70 and points down to the south for these threats. And then, the further south that you go, you can kind of see the threat ramping up after 3 or 4 o'clock and continuing as we work throughout 9 or 10 o'clock west to east.
Absolutely, Brett. And guys, we'll try to get to some of these questions here as we get to the end of the briefing. But one thing I did notice here too that I want to touch on for those of you in Western Ohio, I think in general, I do still think that there's going to be some type of a damaging wind risk as this activity pushes from west to east. I do agree with this model that it shows storm coverage becoming a little bit weaker. I just think that because we don't have that much energy or instability, we are going to lose it that much quicker as we get into Tuesday evening. So I do think that's a little bit more good news. But I would say, even for those of you that are in Columbus or east of Eastern Ohio, east of Columbus, I think the severe risk is very low, if not zero, for any additional activity working in. So that's some good news in Ohio, at least, because I know that you guys still got some of those damaging winds and some tornado warnings as we got into last Friday. So a little bit more of a break, and you can even see that, on the rainfall totals. The models are really trying to depict this activity weakening a little bit more as it gets into Ohio.
Yeah, so here's kind of a look. A lot of areas probably pick up more than an inch of rain over the
Oh
next
yeah.
48 hours. At the very least, 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half or so, I would say. And you can see some of the locally higher totals and the stronger storms. Look at that. Some flash flooding risk out here as well in parts of Missouri and in western Illinois. Drier the further north and east that you go with this particular storm system over the next 48 hours. Real quick, somebody did ask. That's kind of the general overview for tomorrow. Somebody asked about race day. I will look at that real quick. I think we're okay right now.
I do too. I'm trying not to jinx it or anything, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we might have a nice
There,
at least a mostly sunny day. We'll see.
yeah, there's a system out here, but
Mhm.
we have a high pressure coming in from the north. You can see that here. It's going to be chilly compared to normal. The latest GFS, I don't even think it gets us out of the mid 60s. So
Yep.
it's rare that you get a 500 that doesn't get out of the 60s. So it should be perfect to be at the track. You can see all the heat down here in Texas, but a chilly Memorial Day weekend in general. But most of the rains, at least right now, looking to stay west. So
Mhm.
at the very least, that's a good sign for us here locally for Indy 500 day.
Yeah, Brett, it always seems like we're either dealing with last year, the heavy rain and the delay, that wasn't fun, but it seems like about every other year it's either 95 or it's 70, and we're dealing with some type of storm system that we're trying to get the race in before the storms arrive. So it seems every year is something different. Having a break from that and 60s and sunny would be great for the sellout crowd at the Indy 500.
It would, and it would be great for our teams that we will be forecasting for on Sunday. We've got Primo Racing, we've got Ed Carpenter Racing, we've got Ray Hall Letterman that we are forecasting for, and 1-2 positions 1-2 on the grid for Sunday. So fingers crossed that we get one of our teams that we assist in victory lane on Sunday. That would be really cool. But go back real quick, and let's see if there's any other questions that we can address. We'll go back. Here's a look. Rain moving in for tomorrow across the area. I mean, for the morning commute and for kids going off to school, I see your question, Addison. There's probably going to be rain and storms around for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, and for central Indiana specifically, again, there can be, I think, a few gusts of 35 to 45 miles per hour, maybe on that leading edge as it pushes from southwest to the northeast here.
Let's see that.
Data's tried to support that, but I'm not foreseeing at least any severe risks. I think if there's a risk or a problem, it's going to be some potential for flash flooding, especially in your more urban inner city areas. And Brett did show those rainfall totals, and we've mentioned this a couple times. Well, they're kind of leaning more towards an inch and a half for the total event. Brett, I think somebody across central Indiana will probably get 3 inches through this entire event, just because it's one of these setups where you get the heavy rain and storms in the morning, and then you catch a couple cells in the afternoon wave. It's just something where the locally heavier risks, these types of events, they always seem to overachieve.
Yep, for sure. We'll go through the PM wave just one more time. Generally, you're looking 5 to 9 p.m. across the state. You can see the redevelopment here along the Indiana-Illinois border and then kind of sweeping through the Indy metro area by about 7 o'clock, similar timing to what we had on Friday, and then kind of exiting out a little bit. So overall, I think that for after-school activities, probably if you're in Eastern Indiana, you might be able to get some of them in, but if you're in Western and Central Indiana, if you've got a track meet or a golf match that goes into the mid to late evening hours, you're probably going to be needing to keep a very close eye on the radar. So, if you're trying to plan your kids, when you need to pick them up and whatnot, and what you need to watch for, again, scan that QR code for Clarity Home. We'll be sending out timing graphics and whatnot as we go throughout the evening tomorrow to keep you safe. Or if you're a decision maker, a coach, or an athletic director trying to plan around weather tomorrow, maybe scan the QR code and do a trial.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. Brett, maybe we show the severe risk map here one more time, just as a very basic overview. And yeah, I think Phil just popped on here as well. Yeah, at this point, the yellow possible, think of that as more of a scattered risk. I think that, some of this again is going to depend a little bit more on how much clearing we can get in the afternoon. But I think it's generally your orange or more likely area where likely the best potential for tornadoes are going to be once again for this event. But in general, it's another severe weather day where we need to keep an eye on the radar, especially as we get into the afternoon.
Yep. All right, guys, that is all that we have for now. We will, of course, be back tomorrow as severe weather activity. We'll probably have an update in the morning, and then as things ramp up in the afternoon, potentially come back on for a live. Somebody says track meets never catch a break. Yep, my wife coaches track, so it's been a rough year for track, and I'm sure probably golf as well, I would imagine. And so hopefully we can get them some dry time here soon. It'll be a busy week though again. So that's all that we have for today, guys. today, guys, again, scan the QR code, share this, tag a friend, let them know what's coming. We are here to help, and we will be in touch.
Perfect. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.